So, hi everyone, all my friends, my beloved 6 people. My name's Siobhan. I got into poetry because of my brother. Yes. Because he told me that I should go to TIFF's poetry, so I went there and I was absolutely enthralled and engaged, and I thought maybe I should start. So I started writing in January this year, and I've got 4 or 5 poems, hopefully to show the progression of my writing, and hopefully you guys enjoy. So I'll start with the first one. Okay. This one I wrote around December time. If you and me couldn't see each other, he asked me the night before, what would we say? I'll say, could I touch your fingertips and grip where your hips dip, engage our lips like devotion is prayer? With the sounds of our voices fill the space and echo to the vibration of laughter crafted after, ripping off the plaster of how much we matter to each other. If I had nothing to go by but the strength of your frame as I follow your lead through a dance and spin me in a trance, let me fall through the kaleidoscope in the brightest hope that you'd loosen these ropes that suspend me and bring me back to safety. If you could see, would you connect my beauty spots and say you found an earthly constellation of stars, or better yet, read me in detail and trace me like Braille? Speak aloud the words that you feel, like the moon says when I forget how to language with my mouth, I sentence with my hands as I trace over marks that was once found under the blanket of the dark. Could you correct the dots and portray a portrait of eyes, nose to mouth, and drive your hands down south to color me in? There are parts of us that never touch but are forever connected, like how neurons fire electricity and we wonder why there's sparks when we touch, or particles around a nuclei atom. I can never fathom how an indent means we've never actually felt much, or that an entire embryo is as complex as a world, as my emotions take a trip down the vagus and lights up when I see you. Blood rushes through us and connects us like a tube that makes it rush hour. How we can never take each other for granted since we've been granted such life, and as we grow older, our worlds become more complex than just galaxies and universes, as our verses unify us and connect us and merge us into friends, then lovers, then strangers. It's no longer stranger things when we come together to share our vulnerabilities, like seeing in the dark, touching without being touched. Clicks and voice symphonies appreciate those with similar stories. I love this connection, but I fear this confession. But this selection is directional and intentional in its message. Love has us hating and loving ourselves, but connecting ourselves to the Most High, vulnerable enough to get us most high, crying words into the onyx sky that this can never truly be a goodbye. But just as we love silently or loudly, it's a synchronicity that people like us love to write to romanticize its simplicity. The authenticity or duplicity of a smile that confuses me for a while, still reaching your eyes, and all this time I'm hungry for what connects us. And through this I feel that love can never stop. It holds us and keeps us, romantically and platonically, upheaving and down for the healing. That this I'm dealing with and revealing all feels like a peeling of my skin, so you can see within. But no, it's a must, for I thank God for the dots that connect us.
I have a question. My name is Rashad. I'm asking a question to Siobhan. Can you tell me and I guess by extension the audience here, the thoughts and the feelings behind the poem that you just read? Like, what went into it, to as much as you're comfortable with, of course.
Okay. I think it was just the very first couple of poetry events I went to. it felt very overwhelming. It felt like everyone was connected to each other. I felt that people I didn't know were saying things that I thought that only I felt. Obviously, other people feel it too. But I felt so connected to everyone around me. And then I was asked to do a poem about connection, and it was just like, well, I'll just write about how I feel when I'm in a poetry space. And that was it.
Hi, my name's Kavita. I've also got a question for Siobhan. And I was interested to know, when you come up with poetry as beautiful as you just read, do you write with imagery in your mind, or do you write with feeling and then you birth something that is more imagery? I'd love to know what the process is from starting that sort of concept. Does it develop as you go along, or are you writing what you see as a painting of feeling? Yeah.
I think that question was poetry in itself. I love visual images. I'm a very visual person. And so I think it's more visual and then it comes out. But I do love visual imagery. So anything visual, I'm just like, ah.
Yeah, and I thought that was so beautiful how you linked it. You know, you said something to do with we're now galaxies from the point that we met, or something, as if you've now evolved into more greater, like you're now a universe that has formed out of one dot. I thought that was so special, and it was almost, I could close my eyes and visualize the poem as if I'm seeing what you've painted.
Oh, thank you.
I thought that was really stunning. Yeah.
Anyone else? Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Millie.
Millie, go for it.
So many questions.
I'm Millie Rose. A question for Siobhan is coming. How, in hindsight, do you find connecting with the poetry scene or the people that you meet sort of compares to when you started, when you wrote that, back in December?
Oh.
How has it evolved?
I'm definitely happier. I'd say that. I think when I started writing, I wasn't in the best of places, and writing was a very good way out for me. And I don't know, I feel like maybe the people I met that time, I don't know, they were just so bright and beautiful, and just being around other people was just like a nice place to be. Now I'm much happier, and so actually writing is harder. But then Tiff told me to write about what's making me happy, and then I was like, okay, I can do this again. But yes, it's evolved in a good way. Like, I feel like I'm also wanting to give off a good energy as well, rather than feeling like I'm taking from people.
Hi, my name is Arnie, and I'm speaking specifically to the wonderful Siobhan. I feel like in the lyricism of it all, if it could be said in a different way, it almost goes into the precursor of like a bar or like something rap orientated. But you say things with such sensuality and like composure that like it's very adequated to the theme of the poem and what you're talking about, and the softness of your voice, the delivery. The reason why I'm talking about like the way you say it is because like things like kaleidoscope of hope, I feel like, you know, it's like a lot of indebted punchlines that could be rolled into many different ways. Like it's almost like you could rap, but when you say it softly, it becomes poetry, it becomes sensual poetry, it becomes loving poetry, and I think that's where people go in to feel what is being said through the course of the lyrics and stuff. And one thing I liked as well is when you said like the course of blood, like Rush Hour, and it almost made me imagine like when you was writing about it, like you had to be on a journey or you had to be in certain places in order to see the writing that comes out of what you're saying, isn't it? Is that usually what you tend to, or how you tend to get ideas? Do you tend to look at stuff and then this pops into your head?
I mean, to be honest, that bit was because I was watching Human: A World Within. It's a show on Netflix. It's a documentary that I play for my students when I can't be bothered to teach, because it's still very scientific. And then you can find the transcript and ChatGPT, the questions and the answers. You just give it to them, and you know that's your lesson sorted. But I actually saw the video of the people, and then it became like blood, like rushing, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And I think I thought of that when I was writing that.
Yeah,
Not all mine.
it's amazing, intricate metaphor. So yeah.
You cradle my head in your hands again. My neck feels heavy, sinking down into my stomach like thick syrup down your chin. My sighs are heavy and reside in the mossy valleys of your ribs, and my nose carves ridges along your arm, only to carve our names in your shoulder with my teeth. I bite you to release tension in my jaw that someone as beautiful as you could love someone as sour as me. You cradle your head against my chin. Your heart beats like drums, sounding the beginning of an intruder, and the bells curse to the sky when I realize I want you more than I should let on. Your smile feels like rain on a Sunday morning and coffee in the evening. When the sun's rays hit your color at an angle, I can't believe someone could see deserts erupting through sandstorm in your eyes. Don't be fearful for forging faithfuls forever at the feet of your lover, just in case his heavy soul crushes you. What? Isn't the heavy soul yours? One hand out to give love, the other ready to snatch her back before you make the mess of it, but you make sense of it. And so you cradle my head in your hands again, and my neck feels heavy, sinking down into your stomach like thick syrup down my chin. Your sighs are heavy and reside in the mossy valleys of my ribs, and your nose carves ridges along my arm, only to carve our names into my shoulder with your teeth. You bite me to release tension in your jaw that someone as beautiful as me could love someone as sour as you. You cradle your head against my chin. Your heart beats beat like drums sounding the beginning of an intruder and bells through the sky when you realize you want me more than you let on. My smile feels like rain on a Sunday morning and coffee in the evening. And when the sun rays hit my color at the angle, you can't believe someone could see deserts erupting through the sandstorms in my eyes.
Okay. I've got a question. That was very tender and beautiful. There was a lot of like references to like chiseling and tearing away and just almost, I don't know, that expression of like the art's already in the marble, but you're just like already trying to just chip away at it. But there was a line that spoke to me that said like something about someone as sour as you. So what is it about you do you think is sour that made you want to put that into the poem?
That's a good question. Have you ever just like looked at someone and been like, you're just like so amazing, or you're so sweet, or you're so kind, and things like that? And sometimes we have good views of ourselves, I think, and sometimes not so good views of ourselves. And I think in that moment, I think I was just feeling very like bitter and sour, and just like my skin was all like. So that's why. Does it make sense? Like, you know?
Yeah. Also, there's this idea of like almost like putting that person on a pedestal, which is something I frequently do in my poetry as well. So like, is this a love poem, or is it more of like more of an adoration thing, where it's like this person's this and that, and it seems very one-sided, or even though it is beautiful, I tend to put people on a pedestal in my love poetry, so I always feel like it's one-sided as well. But
I think this one is an adoration and a love one, but not an infatuation one, I think. Okay. And I try to make it both-sided by switching the pronouns a little bit. But when I wrote this, it definitely was with someone's mind. Yeah.
Hi, Siobhan, was it? Okay.
Yes.
I'm Dinan.
Hi, Dinan.
Thank you for sharing that. It was really beautiful. And as an extension of Meta's question, I'm very interested in why that flip happened, because in the beginning it reads as a poem about what you said, like feeling like you're unworthy of someone's love because you are sour. Is it that you get to know the person, you realize they're also a person, they also feel sour sometimes? But yeah, I'm very interested in the flip and why it happened, and I really like it as well.
Oh, thank you. It was a little bit of that, actually. It was to show that whatever you think of yourself, someone's probably feeling the same way. So it's meant to be that kind of looking at someone through your eyes, but then looking at you through their eyes. So, and then you realize, oh, actually, we're both the same. We feel the same. We think the same. And I think I'm unworthy of your love, but you think you're unworthy of my love, and that's why we work. That's why we work at it together. But that was
It was well received. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again. Question for Siobhan. So obviously with this poem, at least my takeaway from what stands out to me is the form that you've taken. There's almost like a symmetry to it. And I like that personally, just looking at the shape of things and seeing how sometimes intangible things like poetry can have an actual shape to it. What do you think about when you write about poetry, when you're dabbling with things other than the words? Like what is important to you to have control over, manipulate? Like how do you have that creative spin on it beyond the words? Like, does that make sense?
No.
Okay. Okay, so you have, for example, let's say you have the words of poetry. The words make sense, you have them rhyme, so on and so forth, make sure that it flows, make sure you're telling a specific narrative. And then you have something within that where you have the symmetry, so the form, the shape of it, and having it fold in on itself in a way where it reflects itself. Is there anything else about poetry that sticks out to you that you consider when you write poetry?
Okay. I think the visual images. I think as my poetry, as I've gone on, the visual images have been more important to me. I think I like symmetry when it's something that can be flipped on its head, because not everything can be. But when it can be, I like that because it's like looking at something through different lens. But I think it's visual images that I love the most. I used to be obsessed with rhyming. It's like, it must rhyme. And then and then I would hear other people's poetry and they're like just absolutely in it. And I'm like, hold a minute, but that didn't rhyme. And then I thought to myself, well, actually it doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't have to have a specific thing. So yes, I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, you did. Yeah, it's you started thinking less about it having to rhyme and more about the image of it. And yeah, form is part of that image. So answer my question. Nice. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to get back to the part where you was talking about sandstorm and in the eye. In the course of that imagery and the visuals, is that in the course of looking at someone through their eyes and seeing like a whole different world, or yeah, like I just wanted to know, it's an amazing imagery, but like I just wanted to know what your take or your thought process was in regards to that line of the sandstorm through the course of the eyes.
Can you read it again?
Can I?
Yeah.
Just read that.
Just the last bit.
Yeah, that line of the sandstorm.
When the sun's rays hit your colour at an angle, I can't believe someone could see deserts erupting through sandstorms in your eyes. Have you ever shined a light in your eye?
Yeah.
And you can see all the... So by biology terms, it's a radial and circular muscles that gives it that shape, but the colour is due to the amount of melanin in your eyes, right? So if you look at, like, my eyes, for example, it looks really dark. If I shine a light, it's like really brown, and you can see all the, it really does look like sandstorm, it actually does look like that. And I think in Camden, even here, they have all these shops where you can take like pictures of your eye and then you can make it into like a picture. But it's just that.
Wow.
That's it.
That's so cool that you implemented science just then. That was so cool.
Actually, it kind of reminds me of kind of like your style where you kind of create this microcosm and you expand on it, and the whole thing with the eye is another metaphor for you, like how you write your poetry. Like this microcosm, and you just kind of like zoom in, and yeah, like I've seen those pictures, they're amazing. Like they can look like almost like glitter as well, or stars and constellations. So
yeah,
that's
exactly.
actually
It's
a really cool thing.
beautiful.
But yeah, I didn't even have a question. I was just like, that's what I've kind of
I love
realised
that.
about your poems and stuff.
I love people are like shining lights. Can you see it? Can you see
Yeah,
the colour?
I see it. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Oh, that's a good picture. That's actually a good picture.
Wow.
That's okay. That's everyone's homework for tonight. You're gonna take pictures of each other's art. I want everyone to send it into the group.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for so much for teaching us that. And I would love to know though. So you kind of touched on it there. With your mention of the radial and your science understanding, and I would love to ask the question because you did feature it also in your first poem in parts. But how much does science naturally influence your poetry, and how much is that home to you?
Oh, wow.
Do you feel most at home when you're writing from the lens of science versus anything else? Yeah, that's my question.
Oh my gosh. I think I feel the most at home when I'm talking about love in some way, but I feel the most comfortable when I put science in it, because science has been my thing since
Birth.
yeah.
You're flying out the womb.
My mum is very science-based, so I think just growing up, I kind of just followed her footsteps, and science has been always my thing.
Yeah.
So it just feels so comfortable to have something science. At least with science, I know what I'm talking about. With poetry, I feel like I don't know what I'm talking about.
On that same thing, can I ask a follow-up question? So you know how you mentioned, I think that's so beautifully articulated because I've never actually thought about it like that. But love is so amorphous and like you sometimes can't really understand it because it seems illogical. And then you also, you somehow have worked out how to apply the laws of logic and what is happening in the world to explain what you can't. I think the way it comes through with your poetry seems very genuine and sincere. It doesn't seem like you write from a perspective of being clever. I feel like you write from a space of wanting to articulate like your depths, and that kind of comes across in the poetry. So
Can we all just give clicks for that?
no, seriously, I do genuinely, and I have to say, out of all the poets, I mean, I love the fact that I'm also that scientist, but I think you do it the best. If I'm honest, the science element, I think you're the best I've ever seen. And it's very, very sincere. So, yeah, thanks for inspiring that element in me because I love writing about science. So I'm going to go home and do that today. Thank you.
Piggybacking off what Kavia said about, I sometimes feel like love is almost like a science experiment in itself. And if you look at everyone's situation is different, and I got a poem where I say love that catches 1,000 strains. So there's always different strains of love. And if you look at everyone's petri dish, like every it looks different. The culture looks different.
Yeah.
Like so the love between two people is different from a love from two other people. So I always feel like we're all trying to learn and discover each other, but also everyone is their own universe. Like your ex is different from your next person, and they have their whole other thing going on, and you have to kind of like learn their quirks and learn to love through those quirks sometimes, or you might even love them for them. Like so it's actually really cool. So and that usually actually helps motivate me when I write my love poetry as well, just trying to learn the individual universes of each person that you're writing about. So that's really cool. So thank you for that. Yeah. Cool.
Okay, now I'm going to do a different one. Okay. This one is, I never liked sadness before I met you.
I never liked sadness before I met you. Cool.
She eludes me, dodging from my eyes, and all the while in the corner of my 360 vision, and in her the precision of my delusion that she could be mine. And all this time she climbs the valleys of my spine to escape my body and sit in my brain just in case I forget that she's forever toying with my shadow. When you touched me, I thought the darkness took hold, but she's been there softly reminding that in the two-step of my smile sitting in the corners of my mouth is a kiss that only one heaven sent can find. That in the honey of my words drips the sweetest lies and harshest truth that only one hell-bound can bind. She, happiness, merges with me, colliding her body with mine, realigning my mind and the twirl in my step, teaches me the foxtrot to waltz alone, and she moves my eyes and hands like a puppet who doesn't know she's in control. Do you remember that time when we plucked the sun from heavy fingers and peeled its skin with our teeth, letting the juice drip down our chins? I was happiness then, and even when the citrus burned my cracked lips, I smiled. I wonder sometimes if I am suffocating, if the geography of my sheets force tectonic plates in my throat to close up. A volcanic eruption spews all my words and a new continent forms in its place that calls out the name, happiness. And if I run to her when I feel unsure, as I have always done, to colour the mood a shade of your skin when my fingers are empty shells of myself, navigate a harsh world, a painful existence, an unearned love, I wish for her to take on an embodied form within me out of peace, not survival. What a cycle, to push and pull, to hold on, only to let go. Do you remember that time our hair clung to our faces, screeching down Polish streets? Underneath the rain we laughed and ran like the longest sentences, words fumbling to tumble over each other, struggling to breathe like pauses and kiss like ellipses. I wish I could run. Slap the soles of my feet against the stones in my stomach and watch them turn in my wake when you look at me. Once I did run, and the weight lifted off my neck as the wind and happiness gripped my hair and laughed alongside me, my organs ready to burst in protest out of my chest. Suddenly, I felt my lungs stretch, smooth muscle loosening its grip like my skin was the most malleable metal. When I stopped, I tasted salt water. It had leaped out my eyes like love and carved trails into the corners of my mouth so my kiss drowned. Continents collided and Pangea formed where my bedsheets once were. I let the orange fall from the tree and the worms devour it like it would do me. I curled my body against you so you could find me and broke the strings the puppet pulled on her master. Eyes left indents in my head like when the moon sheds her skin in the daytime, and all the while I elude her. Happiness.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love that you personified happiness, but like the way you write, it feels very encompassing in that I feel like I'm in that world that you've created, and I feel the weight of not like, you know, having happiness eluding me, or like just all these other things that happen when you're in and out of happiness. Like, how do you even think of the details? Like, because you said Pangea and these other, like, yeah, like these are very, like, it's very epic. You kind of go into this experience on a microscopic level and then on a macroscopic level. So I just love, this is why I asked you to come in and do your poetry, because like I feel like I'm also like reading a novel and I can indulge in these like pieces. Like I can imagine this being like an audio book and an actual book. I can just read a page, and I would gladly read it slowly because it's so beautiful. And I just want to just kind of like take my time. Like I would never want to rush this book like if I was reading it. So just thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Lee.
Hey, Lee.
Pleasure to meet you, by the way. Very nice reading. So, do you remember where you were when you thought up this poem, or when you wrote it?
I was in my living room on the chair. I think I was procrastinating from doing some marking, and I was just like, I don't want to do this. And then I started doodling on a separate piece of paper, not on their work. And then I was like drawing the sun and then the moon, and then I was like, oh, maybe I want to write something, and that's what I said. Sorry, it's nothing interesting.
Thank you very much. Just another question, just generally about, I feel like the last two poems are more about more uplifting feelings compared to what you would compare before to your previous work. Is that what we're going to expect from you moving forward, do you feel?
I hope so. Let's see where things go. I'm hoping to be more visual. I really want to make people, you know, like how when you were younger you used to read books and it felt like you were being transported to another world. Oh, there's someone here. I think Lisa's here.
I think she's here. Can you check on me?
Yeah, that's her. Yeah, it felt like I was being transported to another world. So I want to be able to transport other people to another world, visually.
Okay, thank you.
You've mentioned a few times now about your love of visuals, and I just wondered if you ever, I see your brother is into photography, who's sitting in the audience. Do you ever combine real photography and photos with your poetry or as writing inspiration?
No, but that's an amazing idea, and Rochelle, we should really get on that.
There's a collaboration I'm seeing.
Oh wow, that is.
That's a brilliant idea.
That's amazing. Okay, Rochelle, I mean you want it.
Yeah, go on, you go first. I'll go after you.
Hi again, Rashad, the aforementioned photographer. Following up from that previous question, as far as, yeah, I guess future works, if you could sum up like a theme for your early work, wait, actually, let me okay, two-part for this question.
Okay.
First part is, aside from like, maybe just procrastination or just like doodling, are there any poets that you know that you look up to, or pieces of media that you look and you're like, wow, this is amazing? Because I know obviously when I showed you Shinji Moon, which was given to me by Danan, I know that definitely had an effect on you, but has there been any other pieces, whether it be people you know or like things that you've read from somewhere, that you've probably gone more into buying poetry books at this point with more intention? Has anything stuck out to you?
I've also always loved Worcestershire, always. When I read her stuff, I'm like, rah. There's one line that she writes about how she was saying something and about the person, but she was about herself, about her mum's eyes and her dad's nose, and on her face they're still together. And I was like, that is so beautiful. Shinji Moon for me is the queen of visual imagery. So like I take so much inspiration from her, big time. Tara, I don't know if you know Tara, the poet Tara. She's also amazing with visual imagery. I absolutely love her work as well.
Just Tara.
Tara. You know Tara.
Well, what's that?
Oh,
Who is she?
Tara.
Yeah,
Tara.
She's amazing. So
Tara, you're
Tara,
Tara.
Tara is a poet from the scene.
Oh yeah,
And
Tara. So I
yeah,
didn't know it was that Tara.
she's got cool glasses. She just her style is amazing, but her poetry is so beautiful.
Yes.
Similar to like I do want her to do scratch that as well. Like it's so cool.
Honestly,
Yeah.
her poetry is just.
Yeah.
She's an English teacher as well, so it all makes sense.
So then my second question was more so, would you say that your work, or would you be able to, do you think you'd be able to put all your work together in maybe a book? And if you did, what theme do you think your poetry resonates with, like collectively? Because I'm seeing a lot of science, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Inspiration. I'm seeing a lot of connections. So like the body and, those kind of metaphors, looking at, but wait, obviously it's a very visually appealing collection of work that you have shared with us today. So what would you say your theme is?
Well, first of all, if I was ever to do a book, it'll have to be me, your mum. So our mum is a poet herself. She's been writing since she was like 17 in the Caribbean. So if it ever was to do a book, it will have to be a collaboration between my work, your photography, and mum's poetry. But the theme, I think, will probably have something to do with love and science. I think there must be some kind of linking there with like anatomy and the way we see ourselves and blah blah blah. So that would be the theme, I think, love and science.
Okay.
That makes sense because it reminded me of the Shinji Moon book because it's called, I think, the Anatomy of Being. That makes a lot of sense.
I know.
I see
I
why
haven't
it
finished
resonated.
reading it yet, but I will.
Thank you.
I will.
Danan again. Question for Siobhan. As we're talking about what we expect from you, what we can expect from you in the future. I noticed that everything you've shared so far has been about describing a very intense moment as it happens. And you're talking about how you've been happier. Alhamdulillah, we love to see it. And I'm wondering if you ever, and maybe you'll answer this with the poems that you're going to read next, if you ever write reflective poems, because sometimes when you're in a happier space, you look back and you're like, wow, I was really in the trenches, like, I was being done dirty, like, what? And then you write poetry about that. So I'm wondering if that's something that you have done or something that you are starting to explore as well.
I have done that. April is a interesting time for me, interesting month in general. Because just to share, I guess, trauma, I don't know, what's it when you get triggered? Trigger warning? Abortion. And so I have written something on that, but because it's still so, like, I wrote it in April, so it was very raw in April, and I've written something, but I don't think it's finished. I'm happy to read it, but it's just, I think I'll finish it next April.
Again, a stunning poem, Siobhan, and I'm also loving just hearing the process behind it, because often you like the finished product, but what was the journey to get there? I think on the theme of what Lee was mentioning, and also your brother, sometimes, you know, when we are writing from different places of how we feel, like when we are in the trenches, like Adele writes the best hits when she is depressed and actually says openly she hasn't written a good song because she's been so happy for so long. And the relationship we have with poetry becomes different when we are in those different phases of us. Like we're like moons, like sometimes we're half moon, sometimes we're full moon, and we feel less like we need poetry. I wondered, what is your relationship now? I mean, I think you look happier generally and are glowing, and I think your poetry almost feels like when you are performing those earlier pieces that, you know, when you first started, you're sharing your first and second poem. Do you also agree with how I view it, that you're almost seeing those pieces as a more healed version of yourself, and it takes less of you to perform than what it did at the time when you wrote that? And does that make you feel excited for how you could potentially have that relationship with poetry in the future when you're writing at your happiest of highs? Yeah, that's my question.
For sure. When I've got so much on my phone, and when I look back, I'm like, oh God, did I write that? Yeah, like that's a bit,
yeah,
you know, it's a
that's a
bit
bit
dark.
too deep, yeah.
Or when I was, you know, when I'm feeling very confused, I wrote something and I'm like, I see where you were going with that. I see. So when I look back at it, it definitely feels like I've come away.
Yeah.
I've come a long way from that. But hopefully, I think if I stay, and I would like to, but you know, in this kind of, you know, I like to try and write more uplifting poetry and you know, about the people I love as well and things like that. So
yeah, that sounds so
that's
hopeful.
the plan.
And just to add on that, I think, you know, sometimes we think showing our happier selves can feel like the right thing to do because you're helping other people, but we're still complete with all parts of us, whether we're happy or sad. And I think your poetry does exactly that. It shows that you can be as beautiful as you are with your sad poetry as you are with your happy, and we're getting to see that full phase of you. So thanks for sharing that sort of progression with us.
Thank you, love.
Last question for
I feel like the last poem you did demonstrates all the poetic tools. I'm not trying to put in a sort of confinement, but I feel like it demonstrates, like out of all the poems I heard of you, this demonstrates a lot of the poetic tools and prowess that you have going for you, especially the visual exploration, the vibrance of the metaphors as such. Do you also agree that that piece that you did also showcases like the depths and the strength that you have with your penmanship? Like, do you feel like that showcases a lot of the pinnacle of your works in that one piece?
I think so, because writing this one, I kind of studied. I kind of looked at, I was reading Orson Shire, of course. I was reading Langleaf as well, and her love poetry, because she's got many volumes of love poetry. And I love the way she's very frank, very blunt with it. Like, you know, it's just very out there. So I try to use a lot of her as well, just to influence me in her writing. Shinji Moon's visual images as well. I really wrote down and studied like, what is the way? Is it that she's using something that seems mundane and then personifying it, which is where the happiness comes from? Is she using something like a scab to say about like craters on your skin, that kind of thing? So I really did try and study the works a bit more, and then take a step back and just write it. And then my own experiences, like for example, I was in Poland with one of my greatest friends at that time. We didn't kiss, so that's not right. But it completely rained down one day, like torrential rain, and the rain was at like our shins. And I swear, we ran through this square with the rain at our shins. My hair was soaked. I think I fell over. I think I scraped my knee or something like that. She was absolutely, we weren't drunk at all, but it was just the most fun I've ever had. And in that moment, it did not feel like I was even, it just felt like I was just having the best time of my life. So I think with that one as well, like, do you remember when we ran through the Polish streets? And it's just an experience, so.
Okay. All right. That's it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so I'm just going to swing the camera this way. Cool. So I would like to introduce you guys to Lisa Ellis. Just like Siobhan, an amazing writer. I love her, how she dissects life with her words, and obviously the way she writes and the way she performs, because there's this way where, you know, when poets read on the mic, and it's really hard to catch someone's attention with when you're holding a phone or a book, but Lisa does it very well. I think just like these two poets read, like they just kind of savor the words as they read, and it helps people, you know, pull focus and be like, oh, I should be listening. So I like to again say welcome Lisa Ellis to Scratch That. Okay.
Hey everyone. Hi. Hi everyone. I'm so like overcome with joy to be here right now. This is I've never been to this event before, unfortunately, and I didn't know what to expect. And I was expecting a typical poetry night I've been to before. And this is just so epic in the sense, because I think as well that like this is an event for writers. This is an event for poets. It's like for poets by poets. And I feel like in the poetry world, you know, it very much intersects with the entertainment industry. And in doing so, it can intersect with things like singing and rapping in the music industry. But it is something completely different because we toe the line between the page and the stage. And so to be here and like just these chairs and the intimate space that we're sharing, it is, and yeah, I just want to say I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. So the first poem that I'm going to read is actually a poem that was, what I'm going to do actually, so I've written a poetry book. I haven't released it yet or anything, but I'm going to read you some poems from there. Some you've heard before, some you haven't. But if you haven't heard my poetry before, then everything will be new, and we love that. Yeah, so let me do that. And my book is called The Heaviness of the Crown. And the first poem I'm going to read is my favourite poem still, and it's the first poem that I ever performed in a poetry event. And the reason why, I think I just, you know when you're writing something and you get into the flow and you just know that you're doing something special, that's how this one felt for me. But also because it captures so much of my soul and my own experience. It's called A Tribute to Stolen Sisters. I'm upset. This morning, as I went on a run in one of my favourite places, I passed a sign. Rest in peace, sweet sisters, Biba and Nicole. They had been murdered on their birthday, the birthday they shared, celebrating in the place and in the way that all of my friends and I had growing up. We too had stayed in the park until late, until after dark, until after midnight. We played hide and seek in the dark there. I can't count the amount of times that we have gone there to smoke. Well, my friends smoked and I either fell asleep in the car or followed everyone through the darkness, pacifying my too sober and too alert mind that ghosts do not exist. We did that because it was safe. We felt safe there. We ran through the trees one dark night, back to the car as a police helicopter circled above, for the first time seeing the danger in our playground. The sound of the blades chopping the air lifted the blanket of safety that we had always seen the park with. We became too aware of how many crevices there were that could hide a man waiting in the dark. The branches of trees that hugged us during the day became mangled arms that night. They did not brush us as they did in the light, but they scratched, plucked, and tore at us, mad at us for betraying them as we turned our backs on them and ran. Left them for the safety of artificial lights, concrete, and an engine that could take us away from there and back to the safety of our machine-run, semi-virtual world. That was the peak of the danger that we felt there. But even that was not real. Even that was a game of tag that we played with our friend the park, a part of the gang, and we laughed about it after. We would probably still laugh about it today. Me and my scared reaction being the butt of the joke, of course. The joke. The game. For us, that's all it was. For Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman, it was all too real, too serious, and they were taken away, stolen by mangled hands in the night. So as I put one foot in front of the other, watching my trainers fall on the ground that had become cracked and dusty with dehydration, it was them that I thought about. It was them that was on my mind as I thought twice about continuing into the copse of trees. A woman, alone with the trees. Am I safe? I thought. I continued, but somehow lost the energy to run and slowed to a heavy pace, heavy in memoriam. I'm upset. I was standing in Pret, and with my laptop in my hand, I mindlessly walked over to the counter to make my order. And out of nowhere, a man jumps out at me from my left side, creeping upwards like some kind of twisted jack-in-the-box. "You look very nice," he leered at me. Looking up at my disbelieving face, I was so startled that I felt the instantaneous wave of shock descend through my whole body as I instinctively clutched my laptop close to my chest and backed away. "Stay away from me," I stuttered. Or was it, "You're too close"? Which one did I mean and which one did I say? Barely processing what had just happened. I feel like every time something like this happens, it puts a crack into me, as if I am made of glass and on the brink of shattering. Every time something like this happens, all of the other times come flooding back. Every time something like this happens, the dread washes over me, the helplessness. I feel a bit more fragile. But this is the first time that I'm realizing that it will happen again. No matter what I wear, there is no place, no outfit, no attitude that can protect me. As long as I am a woman, there will always be a man that believes I am his jurisdiction, his possession, his right, his entitlement. So now I'm really upset, because it will happen again, and there is nothing I can do about it, because I am a woman.
Wow. What inspired that piece? Because obviously it feels very much like I'm reading a novel as well. But also it's a very powerful statement in terms of just the experience from a woman's point of view, but also just there's these narrative elements kind of embedded throughout So yeah, like what inspired that? Kind of just.
It was, so this, to speak of the inspiration and how it came into being, I guess I need to paint a picture. So one of the reasons, with poetry, the first ever poetry night I went to, which was BYOB, and that's when I met Meta. And that was BYOB in Wembley. And when I saw the people on the stage performing, I was like, wow, they're like me. I felt this resonance with the poets who were performing on stage. And my experience of being human in society is often I'm too much, often I'm too deep, often my friend described me as a waterfall when what people want is a bottle of water. And this poem, it was a WhatsApp message. So it was something that I just allowed myself to flow with. So it started out, it literally came into being because as I narrated it, I went on a run that morning, and then I came back and I had all of these emotions and I just wrote them out and let them flow. And I was just talking to a friend, and for once I didn't restrict myself. And I allowed myself to glow with the flow and enjoy what I was doing and just being who I am. And like who I am is I'm verbose, I'm wordy, I'm descriptive, and I enjoy that. And I like writing and I like reading, and often, I'm sure that there's a community where that resonates, but often I find that in regular society it can be too much. Like I'll write a story and people will say, Lisa, you should do that as a video. And I'm like, but no, I wanted to write it because I enjoy words. But that's how that came into being. It was a WhatsApp message, and if I was myself every single day, I would talk like that every day, and that's how it came into being.
Questions?
Me.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
I absolutely loved that. It felt like going through, like you were watching something. It was a visual with the trees, and it was very Snow White-esque. Do you remember? So it's running through the forest, and then all the trees are like grabbing your hair. But also, I think it's amazing because I also remember that story, and the police were sending like pictures and stuff of it, and I just felt so sick because it was in the midst of George Floyd as well, and it was just a lot. But also the fact that probably I could say that every woman has gone through something like what you said, which is so scary, and it almost makes you feel like you don't want to bring another woman into the world who's going to experience that. But it's about speaking out and connecting with people about their experiences and your experiences, and just making it, really real for people who don't quite get it or understand.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Thank you for saying that. And I love that you've said that as well, because with this poem, some of the reactions I get to it, like typically, it's not like a finger-clicking poem. It's not a crowd pleaser, and it's not an energy maker. And there have been times when I've gone into an audience and I felt guilty about reading it because I don't want to make people feel sad. And again, I'm restricting myself and suppressing myself. But in reality, this is the experience of being a woman. I don't know a woman who wouldn't be able to relate to this poem, whereas there have been men who have come up to me and said, oh wow, I didn't know that that's what it felt like. And I think that that's the importance of the poem, being able to share the experience and like just a snippet of the experience of what it feels like to be a woman. But in particular, a woman of colour, of course. And, I feel very, very proud to say their names. And every single time I go into a room, another name that I thought of for this poem was a protest of something. I forgot the exact other name that I had for it. But every time I read this poem, it also feels like a protest to keep their names alive and to take up space of the experience of womanhood. And I think in a world that it's a tagline to empowerment, like women's empowerment, and it's a great thing. I so love women's empowerment, but I also feel that the fear which is attached to womanhood shouldn't be denied, because it's a real thing that every woman experiences every day.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It was really beautiful, and I could tell that it was difficult to write. And when you tell the story of the sisters who were killed and then you tell the story of the man who is in your personal space at Pret, I think it really puts it into context, because when these things happen, it's not the isolated incident, it becomes about the cumulative. Like, you are reminded of every single thing that's ever happened, and then you're reminded that nothing will necessarily change. Like, this is just going to be our experience.
Yeah.
And this is something that we need to allocate a certain space in our brain to anticipate every time we leave the house. And sometimes when we even don't, like, it's just something that is a part of our experience, whether we like it or not. But I particularly like the fact that you kept repeating that you're upset, because I think, especially as Black women, our relationship with anger is very strange, because on one hand, everything we do is interpreted as anger, to the point where we then feel the need to not express it when we are actually angry. And it's interesting that you then said that sometimes you feel guilty that, you know, coming into spaces and sharing that because you don't want to kill the vibe. But I then remember this is something that is repeated often in protests. Until we get justice, you shouldn't have peace. Like, the vibe should be off, actually, in fact, because we are in danger all the time. People shouldn't be having a good time, actually, as a matter of fact. So I guess, I mean, I don't have a question. I just really enjoyed that. And thank you for sharing it. And I hope that you don't shy away from sharing it. This is our experience. You know, if it ruins someone's day to hear this, it means they're not experiencing it already. It ruins our day every day. So, you know, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. I also, you know, it's nice that you mentioned the circular I'm upset, because when you first started with the poem, I wondered where it was going. And I wanted to ask on that particular point, you know how you talked about how you're verbose and you like words. And I think it's beautiful, by the way, because the poem wouldn't have been as beautiful as it was if you hadn't just gone with it. My question is, did you feel like when you were writing that poem, you know, when you had that I'm upset part that was featured throughout the poem, was it actually you're writing and then you had this moment of, I'm actually upset, and then you kind of came out, and then by the end of the poem, when you're actually writing again, I think it was the third time, I'm upset, by that point you told the story and we kind of understand now why you're upset. But was it that sort of process?
Yeah.
Or was it structured in a way to kind of just make it stronger?
No, so that's another thing. So as I was explaining in the beginning, this started out as a WhatsApp message. So this poem was born before I was ever a poet. I'd never been to a poetry night before. I'd never stepped on the stage before. And then it was just, the reason why that ended up being the first poem that I read is because that night, I had been writing small poems because, okay, long story short, I started writing poems that summer. Yeah. But they were all on Instagram, and Instagram was down that day. And I thought, what could I read on the stage? Because I just want to be with these people who are so alike me. Yeah. And then I thought of the WhatsApp message, and I was like, why don't I read that? And then I couldn't perform it that time, but then when I did get to perform it the next night, I did perform that poem. So it was so purely expression, and yeah, it was expression, and it was a flowing of emotion.
So it's almost like a byproduct of just being real, like the
I
poem.
was upset.
Form, yeah. No, but I think that's so beautiful, and actually it makes it even all the more meaningful because it came from raw expression rather than for performance. Because that's when you can sometimes, like when I'm writing, I sometimes will just, I want to kind of duplicate a line just so it hits and it lands, and it hasn't come from my thought, it's come from me wanting to impress. But I did get the sense from reading yours, it flew like it came from your heart rather than from like just your brain wanting to sound clever. I think that's so beautiful.
I think it was a truly compelling and vibrant. My name's Arnie, and I'm speaking to Ellis. So, I absolutely loved the fact that you was able to tackle something that just needs to be talked about more, because like, especially when we're at a time where people are celebrating awards of like women empowerment and female empowerment, but we're also going through the essence of femicide and like, you know, women not feeling safe in this day and age. So I feel like there's no sense of progressiveness, and I feel like it had a compelling, truly compelling sense of storytelling, and in its own sense of like a novel. And I feel like it was truly compelling because of the level and the variety of subjectivity that you instilled into the sense of the poetry. Do you feel like I feel like a lot of the essence of like the traumatized moments was put into sort of metaphoric sort of notes, like when you talk about the man in the park, you was talking about like mangled hands, and you talk about the tree being a sort of expression for like what was really the true traumatic point. Do you feel like you use poetic tools or poetic notes as a means of like, I'm not saying necessarily downplaying like any courses or triggers, or do you feel like you use that as a sense of
To make it more kind of digestible.
yeah, more digestible. Yeah.
So, okay, so
Sorry.
yeah, in a way, are you asking if I'm using metaphor to make it less graphic?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Again, I would say in this particular poem, no, because the poem very much went where I wanted it to go, in the sense that it was so intuitive and so feeling. But then also, you know, when you kind of like, it felt a bit like when you do a dance move and then like it works and you're like, ooh, like, yeah, that's what I'm saying, like that kind
Feels
of
right.
flow when you're, or like when you're drumming and then you're like in rhythm and then you're like really going with it. It felt like that. But that said, actually, towards the end of the poem, there's definitely an iceberg underneath this tip of an iceberg. And I don't go into detail about that. And I think I'm still quite restrictive about that, because I have this thing, like, one thing, part of my experience of being a woman is that I've really experienced the conditioning of the feeling of needing to be palatable, because I don't want to scare people, and I don't want to make people feel upset, and I don't want to make people feel embarrassed, and I don't want to make people feel, I don't want to expose the reality of life fully, because I feel sometimes like people can't handle that. And so I guess in a way I was using metaphor to put a curtain over the true darkness, which is kind of hidden within that poem.
Yeah, I can thoroughly understand that. And I love the way you ended it as well. I mean, it's like, no matter what way you could have said it, I like the very last three words was, I am woman. And it's almost like you've, despite everything, all the traumatizing that's gone on in the poem, or all the themes of like, you know, negativity that's gone on, you've managed to recapture yourself. And, you know, for anyone to understand and relate to it, you said, I am woman, and say in a way that is empowering, and you sort of overcome any sense of like traumatization and such. So yeah, that was powerful. Thank you.
I feel like it would be quite nice to stay within a theme. So because the first poem that I read was written about black women, I'm going to read another poem which is written about black women, and it's called Saluting Our Sisters. So let's salute our sisters. To the sister who is a wife and a mother, who has started to forget who she was before. To the single mother raising children alone, who was a daughter before she was a mother. We see how hard you have worked, how you have put others before yourself. But this is your time now. To be you, to accept the light and let it shine on you, like you deserve. Sister, we salute you. Sister Zadie, Sister Dawn, thank you for leading the way, for showing the world what a black woman can become, for immortalizing the voice and stories of black women and girls. Sisters, we salute you. To the little black girl who is not seen as a little girl, but is seen as a woman in a child's clothes. School uniform or none, a child, she is not seen as one. Little black girl, we know that what they call rudeness is actually your defense against pain. Your silence is tiredness of being misunderstood again. But you are growing, little sister, and one day you will be grown, and you will be the lighthouse that guides girls who are little, like you once were. Little sister, we see you. Sister, we salute you. Sister, they have asked you where you are from, time and time again. Time and again. I am from here, you have said. That yes, you are black, and you are British still. So walk proudly on the streets that your ancestors paved for you. Sit comfortably in all of the seats that you were not offered but had to win. All of the rooms that you have walked into, wearing your hair with pride, even though they didn't understand it, holding your crown high. Sister, we salute you.
Questions? Feedback? No?
I think
Go for it.
I think I love that. I loved all of it. Especially, I think what hit home for me was the part where you talked about girls in uniforms and they're seen as women, but they're actually still girls. And I think, unfortunately, if it, on the theme of black women, we see that a lot. Like my colleague and I, we work in schools, and we do see that adultification of young black women. And because, you've got an energy to them, sometimes a sass, like a determination, they know exactly how they feel and what they want. It can sometimes be seen as, and they can be treated as not children. And sometimes I feel like that's so important to remember and to realize, and then how you treat them, how you speak to them, how you involve them, it's very different. And I found that very important in, being a teacher. Is incredibly important to see that and to remember that. So, and obviously we hear lots of things about in the news about, do you remember that young black girl who was searched when she shouldn't have been, in the way that she was searched as well? It must have been very traumatic for her. And that it really just does hit home, especially for young black girls who maybe go through puberty earlier and have, they look different. So I think that was really important. That's a big one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to say also, there's a lot of I don't know if it might have been one of the past scratch stats where just talking about women of color, but also just this idea of or maybe idea, this fact that you're tested more in various ways that we will never know, but also just questioning, we had that athlete just questioning whether she was a woman or not.
Wrote an article on her.
Yeah, the idea of being kind of characterized as angry or kind of just the stereotypes that we often see in the workplace, in school, and also in society. And I love that you kind of then put that back into focus as to this is something that still goes on. There's something that still needs to be addressed, but also it's something that's pretty much to some people invisible. So that's actually kind of a great way to have addressed it, and we still do through poetry, through art. So just thank you for that contribution.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
So I just wanted to say I had to take some time to think about what I really wanted to say. If we go through the course of, or the matter of open mics, features, and all these different shows and events, it goes without saying, not everyone is always going to hear people being given their flowers. You look at, the particular month where people sort of cherish and celebrate particular individuals for who they are as a person. It's wonderful to be able to hear someone just grant the flowers and make people realize you can celebrate other people for who they are. And like I said, in the course of the open mics, you can hear everything else except the quintessence of being able to celebrate people for who they are in life. And I appreciate that you're able to do that, and just keep moving forward with it. And we need to celebrate black women. We need to celebrate women in general as often, especially in the open mics.
But I thought it was quite a beautiful metaphor about the lighthouse that you mentioned. And the thought I had was, in your poem, you're saying to the sisters that you can be a lighthouse for the sisters that are little, or something similar to that. And I thought it was quite nice because, in a way, what you have become yourself if you are saying these words, is you've become a lighthouse to guide sisters, to guide sisters. So it's quite a nice inception moment. And also, it's probably the words that you wanted to hear as a kid that you're now getting to say from a platform that you've now formed yourself. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that you're actually actualizing your own wishes. So I thought that was quite beautiful. Yeah. Cool.
So I'll be reading another poem from my book, and this is called, ooh, I'm tempted to read a different one, but I'm going to stick with this one. And it is called, oh, give me a second. You Are Enough. And I actually know this one off by heart, so I can make eye contact with you for the whole thing. You are enough. What you don't see is that you are a seed, that you have not yet become all that you will be. Be patient with yourself. Give yourself time to see what others see in you, your beauty, your splendor, your talent, all of the things that make you lovable. And you are so, so loved. You, my dear, are more than enough.
What inspired that piece?
So that piece was written whilst I was sitting on the Jubilee line, and I was on the way to a poetry workshop. So I was going to be performing at the workshop. And I'll be honest, I had to write, I didn't have to, but I wanted to write new poems for that performance. And I'll be honest, in the same fashion that I do everything in life, it was incredibly last minute. And as I was on the way to the performance, I just wrote like 3 poems really quickly. It's funny though, because I feel like I gassed myself up by doing that because I thought that was something that I could always do. But like if I tried to do it today, it just wouldn't work the same. But one thing I think about poetry though, I think people can think that if you write a poem in 2 minutes that, oh yeah, it took 2 minutes to write, but that's not the case, because first it had to be lived and it had to be experienced. And every single thing that we do is a layer on top of layers upon top of layers. And sometimes we can just skim something off of the top, but actually, like I said before, all of these poems are the tip of an iceberg that lives underneath. So yeah, I was feeling nervous before I went to this performance, and I wrote that poem to myself. But then so many people have connected with it since, so it feels important to share it because it's a direct message to everyone who hears it.
You immediately answered my question as soon as you said you wrote it to yourself, but if you could imagine palpably the person that you wanted to relate it the most to, and they manifested right in front of you, what sort of person would that piece be for? Like, in the physicality, how would that person look like to you as you're writing it?
Honestly, I couldn't say physical characteristics because I believe it's for everyone, in the sense that it's for anyone who needs to hear it. And I feel like sometimes we can think that words of affirmation should go to people who are down or people who have been through something, but actually it's really important to check in on your strong friends too, and the person who looks like they're achieving everything and the person who looks like, you know, they're thriving. So I wouldn't say it's not a poem that's needed for people who are weak or for people who are down. It's for people who are up to, because at every stage of the journey, sometimes those thoughts can come into us that we're not enough and that, you know, we're not doing enough. But actually, it's just a reminder that no matter where you are deserving and you are enough.
This one is a bit of a long one, so hopefully you guys will stay on board. This one is one that I wrote. It has my mum in mind. My mum is a very strong woman. she has sacrificed a lot for my brother and I. And I think with that comes a certain love, but it could also be, I really don't want you to go through the same things that I went through. And the last time my mom was here, because she lives in another country, so the last time my mom was here, we had a lot of conversations, and even though she really didn't want me to go through the same things she did, it turns out that we did. So it's kind of like a poem to her, I guess, I think. Okay. Although you and me came from the same sea, we will never drown in the same waters. I have crafted a ship out of regret and glued together my fear and pain in hope that this will keep you afloat. I have opened my mouth to smile and swallowed the entire ocean, discovered skeletons on the seabed. I have brought you the treasures found when I drowned and show you that there is nothing new down there. How can I not show you? How can I not tell you when your toes touch the water and grasp at your souls? We are from the same sea, but we will never drown in the same. I have laboured a tower out of destroyed dreams, so sickly sweet that creatures cannot climb the mossy ridges of your rib cages to reach in and take you with the current. I have paved the journey it took with shells to find my way back and tell you that there is nothing new down there. How can I not tell you? How can I not show you when your shins crash against the water? We are from the same sea, but we will never drown. I have crafted a castle out of quicksand kisses that sink you. Elaborate and cold skins drag warm hearts across, picking up broken pieces of glass to bleed upon, to show you that they are not real. When you look through it, you'll see that there is nothing new down there. How can I not tell you? How can I not show you when your thighs make shifts in the calm water? We are from the same sea, but we were never. I forged a mighty fortress out of love and sacrifice, so you may not have to sacrifice in love, and all those who ascend their words over the wall to harm you. I put spikes for those with hungry eyes and arrows to gravel knees. I have drowned the ships with my rocks in the palms of my hands that carried ugly deeds. I have climbed my tower to rescue you from a dark and heavy hue. I have striked the castle and pulled you from the rubble. I have stilled the water so you do not drown unless you walk into the ocean with the water pooling around your neck so you can see what I could not show you. We are from the same sea and we have drowned in the same water so you could tell your daughter there is nothing new down there. From my mama.
That was beautiful. I actually can see this being like a legacy piece where 50 years from when your granddaughter and your daughter are watching this video, I can imagine you writing a poem to them, and I can imagine them watching this video in the future. So what would, if you were to write it, or if you were to just tell them through this lens, what would you kind of communicate to them like you did with this poem?
Wow, Meta, you're going to make me cry on this thing.
I wasn't trying to. You can. But
no.
You can. It's a safe.
I think I would tell my daughter and granddaughter that I will love them. I will love them, but I would try not to kind of suffocate them in the process, allow them to make their own mistakes, and without all the love that I have for them, want them to make their own mistakes, because I think it's difficult to say, but when you really love someone and you see them going down the wrong path, you want to stop them as much as you can, but maybe them going down that path is very important for them. And I think that's what my mom tried to do, is to protect my brother and I from so many things. But I think there's also a lot of love there in allowing someone, as long as they're not actually really harming them, of course, allow them to experience those things, I think.
I have to say, I did feel quite emotional throughout that poem. I've heard it before. I think you performed it a crossword lyric from memory.
Yes, that you were saying.
Yeah, I just remembered some lines and I was like, oh, it's this poem. And I thought, first of all, the way that I've written so much of this, but you said something so clever. You said some lines about sacrifice for love and then the sacrifice in love. I've never even thought about the depths of sacrifice in that regard. I thought that was really smart. And then the ending of your poem, could you remind me what the last line is? You said something like, and we have drowned in that water, so you can tell your daughter. And so what's the last line that you said?
That there's nothing new down there.
Yeah, I thought that was so clever because the whole poem is non-rhyming and the whole concept around this is the ocean and water, and you've written this as an ode to your mum, and it's about being your mum's daughter. I thought it was just so clever the way that you ended up saying, you brought it back. At the beginning, I think you said something like, we're in the same sea, but we never drowned.
Yeah.
And then the last line is, we're in the same sea, but we have drowned.
Yeah.
I just thought it was such a clever poem, and it's very emotional for any mother and daughter to listen to. It did make me think of my own future kids one day, and I wanted to ask, there is a question in here, sorry, it's not just gushing. The question is, what would you... Obviously, we can't go back and change the past, and obviously people love and they act out of love for what they think is best for you. But in realizing this sort of depths, and what would you say is the biggest message within this poem, of the whole message? If you could sum it up in like one sentence, what is the message for yourself, not the world, but for yourself?
That parents are human and they're people, and they've done everything that they can because they believe it's the right thing. And I think you need to give people like a little bit of, leeway, like, this was done because you loved me and because you thought that was the best thing based on your experience and your upbringing. So I think
that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Hello.
Hi.
Millie Rose speaking to Siobhan. My question is your use of water in that piece. Why is the use of like water used in such a sort of visual way? Like, it's a really visual piece, I found. So what was the inspiration behind that, I suppose?
I think it was the first time I realised my mum and I were very similar. We were in Jamaica, that's where my mum's from, and we were swimming, and she was telling me a story about how she almost drowned and how she doesn't like to go deep further on than a certain point. And at that point I was like, no, that exact same thing happened to me. And then she was like, really? And then she's like, you never told me. And I was like, well, you never told me. And it was just that moment. We were both in the water at that point. Sorry, I feel so shaky because it's just so like all in my body. We were both in the water at the moment. It was just like, oh, wow. And then we hugged and then we never spoke about it again. So it was just a nice moment to be like, and then from then on, there's so much more. Yeah, gosh, I can't. Like,
that was a very, very beautiful piece. One thing that I found is like going back to like your use of language. You used a lot of personification and to create a deeper sense of imagery. Would you say that's like a common theme within your writing style?
I try. I love visual imagery, and I like to to create images in people's minds. So I do that, but it's also just how I see it. I think I'm very visual as well, very visual learner too. When I learn something, it's because I can see someone do it themselves and I copy them. So I think it's part of that.
Just a last quick follow-up to that. What does storytelling mean to you in like the way that you communicate your messages?
Wow, these are good questions. Storytelling. Again, sorry, to do with my mum, because there's a poem about my mum. So when I was younger, my mum used to make me read to her. As her favourite book was The Secret Garden. Don't you guys know that book, The Secret Garden? And I remember reading it, and then she'd always stop me, because my mum told me to read when I was 2, by the way. There's a whole nother that's a whole nother thing. But she would always stop me if I wasn't pausing at the full stops and at the commas and reading with expression. So reading to my mom became a thing between me and her. So even when she's down now, I will ask her, do you want me to read to you? She's like, yeah. So I'll read like whatever book I'm reading, I read to her, and it's such a thing between us. I've only ever asked one person that I've dated, would they ever read to me? He's right there. Because it's such a it's such a beautiful moment. So I think the storytelling comes from reading to my mum, and we'd be driving long distance. She's like, tell me a story, and I have to make up some random. She's like, it has to have a beginning, middle, and end. So it was just, I always end it, and then it was a dream, when you were young. So I think it's to do with her again. Thanks. She is.
Do you feel like using water as a sense of like the relationship between mother and daughter, and in terms of like the subjectivity of like parental style, do you feel like you're trying to invoke the message of things where you hear like diving into the deep end, allowing your loved one to dive into the deep end? Because I was just searching up Kanye West's lyrics in Bound 2 in regards to like you're supposed to let your loved ones drown or something like that. And yeah, he's a poet, amazing poet. But yeah, like, do you feel like your poem elaborates on that whole allowing your daughter or your loved one to drown, or in order to encompass life, and we see life as like water in a nurturing sense, like, yeah, do you see it as like that?
Do you know what, Annie? As you said that, I was thinking of that moment where there's a change in the bond between mother and daughters when the water breaks, And I just thought of that as you were saying that. So that's for Arnie. Goddamn.
Let's not go
Yeah. So I think yes, I think you're right. I think there is such a connection between that.
I do like the kind of metaphor for water when you said like you've been there and nothing's down there, but there's sometimes like with like us and our parents, or us with our future kids, where they're going on. You can see them going on a similar path that you went down for a certain thing, and there's nothing there, but it's on the way there that you learn things, and it's why we have to kind of. If you love something, let it go. You have to kind of let them make those mistakes, because those mistakes. Actually, it's funny. Like you learn the lessons because of the mistakes, because like that's what makes you remember it. Because like it's like, oh, I remember when this happened because I didn't do this, or that I did this. And when things go well, we kind of just don't care to remember it because it didn't cost us anything at the time. That we just think like it just went well, and we're just going to continue to do it that way until something else goes wrong or whatever. But yeah, it is kind of like I find that the best people that have navigated through life are the ones that make the most mistakes. So I think that's the journey of water as well, where it comes from the source to the sea, but also goes through the river and then that kind of thing. And then also this thing about like the story with you and your mum being in the water at the time, but it's the water that is connecting you to, which I find really like poetic. So yeah, like I just kind of wanted to say that.
Thank you so much. I think also because in there, my mum is trying to build up things that's higher and higher and higher away from the water, but I end up just walking into water anyway. It is what it is.
Is that the tower thing?
Yeah.
What end up? Tower or something? Dreams.
I can't remember truly. But yeah.
When I think of water, I think flat, and then when you mention this tower of something, it adds another dimension to the picture of. It's like it becomes from 2D to 3D, and I was starting to see it's an actual scene of. I didn't know it was going to be about you and your mum actually in the water, though. That even makes it more literal and so beautiful. And I do hope one day, some form of that gets to be seen by her, because that's really touched me, the poem. So I can't imagine what it means for you. Thanks.
It's funny because a few people touched on this, but for me, the image, I guess when I was listening to you read, I think you write in such a literary way, which I love. And I love like analysing literature and like imagery and things like that. So what really stood out for me was the imagery that you created with water. And I symbolically see water as very feminine. It's a symbol of change. And I thought that the refrain that you used through the poem was really interesting, because it started off as so we don't drown here, and then it was getting less and less and less, and then it's we do drown, and that was a change. Like water is the symbol of change. Your poem changed, and it's like a generational change too. And I almost see it as for your mother to love, to protect was an act of love. And then for you, it became to let someone live as an act of love. And it's that shift, that generational shift. And then, of course, water having the symbolism, well, the literal, it's literally amniotic fluid. We are all born in an ocean. We are
Quite
like we live.
literally.
Yeah, we're connected to our parents through our mothers.
Yeah.
Through water. And then in the beginning of the poem, you said we're of the same seed, and I thought of how, we both existed in our mother and us existed in our grandma at the same time.
Yeah,
kind of thing. So
mad,
yeah. But I just thought that the imagery was beautiful, and the water itself was very, very strong, and I loved it.
I love this new friendship that's happening.
Oh my gosh! Also,
yeah.
And even you said that,
Yeah,
You said that your mum like nearly drowned. The same thing happened to mine. And then when you were
Really?
saying, like, you literally took the words out of my mouth, because you were talking about reading to your mum. And then in my head, I was thinking, yeah, my mum taught me to read with expression. And as I said that, you said it out loud, and I was like,
We're too similar,
Yeah,
so you did something.
it made me quite emotional as well, though, because I haven't read to my mum in years, and it made me think that's something that I should do again.
I love that.
Let me find my poem. So the next poem that I'll read for you is called Ocean. Yeah, exactly. Let's keep it in theme. I write this poem as I lay in bed, after waking up in the morning after a few hours of sleep. A couple of hours before, I had felt something close to elation, just a moment of pure, unadulterated love and optimism. But when I woke up, I felt drained. I spiraled. I was consumed by negative thoughts and a feeling of emptiness. I felt drained by the complete flip in my mood, drained by my emotions. And I thought of the ocean, how she has tides and how she has waves, and how they are completely natural, and in fact they are her. The movement of the ocean is what makes her her. If she didn't move, she would be a lifeless, dead puddle. It is her movements which allow her to facilitate life. Her constant changing. She is never the same. The only thing that is the same about her is her movement, her flows, her eddies, her whirls and her waves. She is never still, down to the microscopic level, from what you see to what you can't, from a big blue whale to plankton in the sea. Each drop of her is brimming with life. We see her as water, but she is closer to a primordial soup, the beginning of life and so often the end of it too. She is a body on her own, a whole being. She has systems, she has cells. She is a cell herself. When I think of the ocean and her waves, I also think of the waves of the electromagnetic spectrum. She is energy. I am energy. Because I am energy, I have waves. I don't need to feel bad about feeling bad, or feeling high 1 minute, or low the next, because the fluctuation, that undulation of energy, is life. Energy is what life is. I'm a woman. Water is feminine. I am like the ocean.
Amazing piece again.
Thank you.
Initially, it started off very personal, then became abstract, and then it became a form of like self-soothing from my perspective. What would you say was the overlying, how did the overlying lead into the underlying message?
So self-soothing is exactly what it was. And I think that's what poetry is for me. Not always, but sometimes. I've had people comment on my performances quite a lot in the past, and one of the words that always comes back is, "Oh, that was so soothing, it's so soothing." People say that my performance or my words or my voice is soothing. And that's because for me, poetry is a form of soothing. And I liken it to when a cat purrs. So cats purr when they're happy, but they also purr to heal. And they purr to make themselves feel more comfortable, feel better. And the frequency of their purr is a healing frequency for us. And so I find that when I get into this flow, it is a form of self-soothing and it is a form of self-healing. And as you can see over the course of the poem, it had all of those fluctuations, and it had that messiness, and it had that 1 minute I'm feeling this, 1 minute I'm feeling that. And I embraced it because that is the experience that I'm living. And I feel that by going into the abstract, that's what made me see how acceptable it is to be human. Because that's actually, so much of my poetry is inspired by nature, so much of everything. Ironically, Siobhan and I both studied biomedical science. So by studying biology, it's the study of life, and I learned so much. But then even if I hadn't done a degree in it, just walking out in nature, seeing a tree, observing how the leaves of a tree fall, how it has roots, how it has a trunk, and how they come back again in the spring, it tells me all that I need to know about life. And so I can be going through something and then observe nature and then feel justified and vindicated and also allowed, because we are life, we are organisms. And so by seeing a big organism experience its life, I feel justified in living my own.
Okay, which one? Fun one or a love one?
I love. I mean, I love audience.
Fun. Okay, fun. Let's do fun.
They don't have fun.
Okay. This one's called a Thesaurus of Plethoras. A Thesaurus of Plethoras. Get in between these crevices. Tease out the sharp shards that can cause you pain. One by one. Meticulous rhythm. I'll remove each one so you don't shrink back and escape into nothing. Retract and set back. I'll move around you. I'll ensure that my hands, in my eyes, on my mouth, you are safe. I may leave you bleeding and grieving, on the side, ignored, only to be smiled at and flushed through. I'll undo the retract and set back. I've been told not to let go too far, but I'll regret it and I'll seek out the pain, the invasion of another's hand in my mouth. Invading, teasing, dragging and pulling all of it out of me so meticulously, carefully, painfully, so each day I will stand in front of you and floss my teeth. Do you get it? It's flossing. That's it.
I have 2 little poems, then I have 1 poem.
Give us a choice.
Oh, okay, so, the choice, you have options, is, so I have 3 little poems, or I have 1 bigger poem, but the bigger poem is quite profound.
What are you feeling? What are you going for?
What are you feeling?
It's kind of in theme with all the other things I've done today, so I guess I can continue in that. Okay, it's called Life. Life is just life. Trees aren't alive to reach a certain height. They don't grow with the intention of becoming tall. They grow towards the sun, to be alive. Yes, they have a genetic potential, but they are bigger than just themselves. Their potential is actually determined by the whole ecosystem that they live in. The fertility of the soil they root down in, the trees growing alongside them, The plentiness of the groundwater their roots can reach, the frequency of the rain, the heat of the sun, the coverage of the clouds, and so on. But a tree does not fail if it does not become the tallest in the forest, or reach the same height as all of the trees that surround it. Even if the tree barely becomes more than a stump, it is still beautiful and wonderfully made. It is invaluable to its ecosystem. Its roots hold the ground together, structuring the earth and supporting all of the feet that walk upon it. This tree is a home to multifarious insects. It breathes life into all of the animals that are proximal to it by pouring oxygen into their air. I promise you, without a doubt, you are adding something to the lives of many around you. You are enriching the lives of people you know and love, but also the people of those you don't know and haven't met yet, and especially the animals. Your presence on this earth is giving. You don't need to make a certain amount of money or drive a certain vehicle. There is so much that you can contribute to this world and the people around you that has nothing to do with what you would contribute to the economy. You are a source. You are a channel for the source. And in being a channel for the source, you are a source yourself. The same way that trees are a source of oxygen by being a channel for water and sunlight.
You mean to tell me that, as profound as it is, you're going to say, no, I'm not going to do this today?
I wasn't sure.
Nah, we don't censor things like that, you know. Like, this is how you breathe light into other people's reflection, you know. This is how people see light in the dark. Come on now.
Thank you.
You do not censor your truth in order for someone to not even hear it and not feel like they're getting light right there or receive some sort of inertia. Because, you know, honestly, it's so proverbial, and I just closed my eyes to the whole tree reaching the sun. Man, that was biblical right there. Without being biblical. Like, yeah.
Sorry, my question is actually for the both of you. So, did you envision anyone when you wrote your poems?
Would you like to go first?
Well, mine's about flossing my teeth. But not gonna lie though, I did it a couple months ago. I had a very, very traumatic experience in the dentist chair. I was in the dentist for 7 hours. I was getting my marina removed, the teeth removed, implants put in because I love sugar, and it just caught up with me. But it was really bad. Like, I remember looking at the dentist and there was like blood all over his thing, and I'm pretty sure I ran out of there. I don't even remember the end conversation that we had. I just ran out, and I remember being like, look at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, you did this to yourself. So, yes. So it's about flossing. So it wasn't about anyone, it was just about my teeth.
Yeah. No, I've had dental drama as well, so I relate to what you said. I had such a sweet tooth before. My poem was written after, so like I kind of mentioned earlier, spending time in nature is super inspiring for me. I think the way that I describe it and the way that I think about poetry is, as humans, as poets, the poetry is always inside of us. For me, poetry is a language that I speak, and that's why it's always been there. And so when people ask me when I became a poet, it's kind of like a non-question because it didn't begin or end. It's just always been. And so, thanks guys. But with the poetry, it's almost like the poetry is always there, and all a poet has to do, or all I have to do, is give the words the space to exist and give the poem the space to live and exist. And so when I'm in nature, I feel like, because poetry is there are less layers in nature. There's less distraction, there's less noise in all forms. And so in peeling back the layers, the poetry can come to the surface. And then if I give it the space, it can live. And so that day that I wrote this poem, I had sat in a tree for 3 hours reading. And it was just great. I was just like one with the tree, and the tree was like holding me. Like I found a perfect nook, and I just lay in the tree and I was like reading my book, and I just had the most profound experience. It was amazing. Anyway, it was amazing. I had the most profound, amazing, incredible experience in the tree, and it just set me right. And I had so much gratitude for that tree and for life, because it's like I experienced the truest, purest beauty of life by existing with that tree. And then so I went home, and I guess in a way I was given this natural high by spending time in nature in that way. And then when I got home, I was on my phone, then I went on Reddit, and then a guy had written a post about how he's in debt, and because of how much debt he's in, he's thinking of doing like the worst thing a person could do to themselves. And it was just so tragic to me. It was so tragic, and it was heartbreaking. And those words just spilled out of me to him. Because how could someone, like in that moment, all I could think is these numbers are virtual. They are not life, they are not real, they're not tangible. Like the trees, nature, that is what life is. Like the bodies that we can touch, the humans that we can interact with and speak with, that's life. And it just felt so sad to me that someone could feel like ending something so beautiful because of something which isn't real. But then also I say that with a pinch of salt or with discretion, that I understand is hard, because as much as these numbers may be virtual, our world is semi-virtual at this point, you know, and to our brain is indistinguishable. And so it is a reality, and it's two truths being true at the same time, and it's difficult. So yeah.
One question. Do you forage?
Yeah,
You forage?
I do.
Go forage, buddy.
That's very good. We can go together, girl. I was actually like, planning a forage, but yeah, come with. Yeah, we'll talk.
So,
You want to come?
It's perfect to say something like that, knowing that we're in moments of suicide prevention day, month, year.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it was great for someone to be heard and such. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
I have a question about the piece. When you write your poetry and it comes to you in these different moments, and if the poetry is just you giving space for the words to be heard, how do you feel after you've either written it or performed the piece? What's that feeling like for you?
In a way, I guess there's a kind of like feeling of energy. It's a feeling of something not tangible, but it's almost like a feeling of being in tune. Like, you know, when you can hear tune, like you can hear when something's like off key, and then you can hear when it's on key, or like when you're singing, you know when you're on tune and when you're not. I guess in a way poetry feels similar to what I was saying about the dancing. It kind of feels like singing in key or singing in tune. But then, like, I guess when there isn't a poem waiting to be written, then it's not that I have nothing in my head, but it's more that the words in my head will be more like, I'm thinking. But then when a piece is in my head, it's a train of words. It's like a flow of words versus, it's more like, yeah.
More of alignment.
In a way, yeah, I guess. It's a very interesting question. I'm going to have to think about that some more. But yeah, it's like, and I think also as well that like once I get taught, like as in like when I talk, it's like, it's a flow thing, like just like finding the flow. And I guess because in a way, I don't know if you've noticed, but each of the poems that I've written and I've read tonight, they've all been a response to some call or other. They've all been a reaction. So, you know, like the first poem that I read, I saw the sign that said, "Rest in peace, sweet sisters." And in seeing that, the poem was a reflection, like the poem bounced off of that. And then, you know, I had this amazing experience in nature, and that put me into a certain state. And then so when I saw his piece, like it was a reflection of that. So I guess the poems are like reflections off of me and like the way I interact with the world.
So I feel like there's no limits to creativity, and the way I've always seen creativity, or the way I've seen works, is deriving from three things: what you see, what you hear, and what you feel. This is a question for you both. What do you feel like a lot of your poetry derives from? I know he's going to question me later, although he's smart. Yeah. What do you feel like a lot of your poetry derives from? Those three quintessentials. Like, what do you feel?
I feel for me that a lot of my poetry derives from personal experiences. Often I get inspired by something, and then the same way, I guess my poems are conversations with the world and all my experiences. So similarly to how if you ask me a question or you ask me a question, I would have an answer. Sometimes it's a photograph that asks me a question or says something to me and I respond, like the poetry is the response, or it's something that someone said, or it's something that I feel. But it is always a response, and I think that's why I feel so much clarity when I'm writing these poems. And then when I try to write a poem, it's just not that easy. I even have a poem about that, but we can share that afterwards. But yeah, like if I just try to come up with a poem out of the blue, it's like, it doesn't work like that for me. I don't like, yeah. But if I feel something, then there's just so much to say. What about yourself?
I think it's not quite sure, to be honest. I think it's a personal experiences for sure. Also how I'm feeling. I think the strong emotions for me is love and pain. Those are the strong emotions. I think that's for everyone. But I think those two emotions, that's when I can write the best. So if it's love for my mum or for my family or for someone, or pain about something, that's when I can write. So I'm trying to step away from that and do something a little bit more uplifting or just silly or whatever, because I'm really trying to get away from that like heaviness of it. I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, that.
Cool. I'm kind of mindful of the time because I've got 7 minutes left in this space. So I just wanted to say thank you to Siobhan, Lisa Ellis, and also Aya for doing Scratch That with me this year. It's been a journey.
Go, go.
So clap for everyone. I'm excited to edit these, and I just wanted to say thank you for just giving us your poems, giving us your time. And yeah, just having a beautiful conversation in a safe space, and I appreciate everyone that's attended, and I hope to do more of these, so hopefully next year we can support more poets in this kind of environment that have an inclination to just write in a certain way, who aren't necessarily shown on the stage space of poetry. So yeah, thank you so much for giving each other time. So thank you guys.
Sorry. Can we all just say thank you to Meta as well? Thank you.